Welcome to our presentation. We're going to be talking about supporter retention. It's something that probably isn't talked about enough in the sector we're working in at the moment, especially given the pressures that people's budgets are under and the opportunity that it provides in increasing engagement, donations and participation with your cause. So I'm Paul, I'm the Business Development Director at Engaging Networks, but my background is largely in the charity sector. I worked in fundraising for a long time and have done a lot of work on donor retention and a kind of deepening donor engagement in my kind of previous career.
Yep, my name's Katie. I work at Which. You may know us for the magazine and the product reviews, but we actually have a really strong history of advocacy campaigning, from getting the government to ban lead paint in children's toys to more recently protections for scam victims. So I'm just going to talk with Paul about some of the practical engagement tactics we've put into our retention strategies for our supporters. Fantastic.
So I think I've started with a quote from an upcoming report that we're publishing. It's featuring one of our accredited partners, Actually Data, Katie from Which, and Rennie Grove Hospice, who I think are here as well today. And I think this is one of the most important things that's said in the publication, which is about having a strategy around retention of your supporters before you kind of take a single acquisition action. You should be thinking about how you're going to keep people on your database and keep people engaged. And retaining an audience really does start with your strategy, be that your organisation strategy or the strategies around the campaigns that you're promoting. You need to think about how you want people to support you, what value you're going to offer them, and how you're going to keep them motivated, because you want to deepen that engagement and you want to get people taking broader actions. And a large part of that is understanding your audience. Who are the people you're talking to? What makes them tick? What are they passionate about? What are the pain points that are bringing them to your cause or bringing them to engage with you in the first place? And then key to that is decide what success looks like before you start the activity. Work out your KPIs, figure out what your organisation needs the supporters you're engaging to do. I think quite often we're quite inclined to decide what we're going to measure after an activity started, where you know something's been successful, and then celebrate the successful bits and ignore the things that may be a little more important. Katie said something very similar to this in her case study, but I thought quoting the person I'm presenting with might be a bit odd. But in an era of kind of reducing budgets, retaining supporters is really cheap compared to acquiring new supporters. And it's something that the private sector have kind of cottoned on to probably a little bit before us in terms of where they should be investing their budgets. And they've started to publish research on the impact of investing in retention. Acquiring a new supporter is up to 25 times more expensive than retaining an existing customer. And so if you start to invest in retention, you can expect to see your profits go up against a lower spend. And the private sector have found that a 5% increase in retention can result in a 90% increase in profit. So you can have a huge impact on the impact you can make in your cause by retaining more supporters, by retaining more donors, and by retaining more of the participants that you're engaging every day. And then finally, you're far more likely to cross-sell actions to your existing audience than you are a new audience. In the private sector, they've worked out they're 6 times more likely to sell a product into an existing customer than to go out and acquire a new customer. So there are real kind of benefits to doing that. And at a time when charities are spending 90% of their fundraising budget on acquisition, it's a huge investment. By cutting that cake up a little bit differently and investing more in the people you're already engaged with and who are already passionate about your cause, we can have more impact, we can raise more money, and we can get more campaigning actions.
Great, thanks, Paul. And all retention strategies can start with a welcome journey. So I'm not going to go into the core principles of a welcome journey around good first impressions, but showing your impact. But for us, we really want to make our welcome journeys personal. And I don't mean just adding a first name tag. I often see organizations using email, it's an outbound communications, but not really taking in back from what their supporters have to say. Our first email on our welcome journey just asks our supporters, what do you want to see, tell us your views, what do you want to see us campaigning on? And it's been really fruitful in that information. That insight is really helpful. We feed that back to our policy teams. What are people dealing with in their day-to-day lives? We also use that for comms and messaging to see how people are talking about certain issues. So it's really beneficial. Another thing for our welcome journey is variety and benefits. So you have to assume these people know nothing about your organizations as soon as they join your welcome journey. So really showing them the best of what you've got. And we worked with an organization a few years ago now about if they were to sign a petition on a certain cause, what are they then likely to sign a petition on? What actions are they likely to take? Essentially, they found no patterns of behaviour, which was a slight relief for us because it meant we didn't have to create loads of different variations of our welcome journey. But actually, it just showed us that we're just going to give them the best of what we got, be really varied in our actions, and then just take it from there. And also, as part of our retention strategy, we never send one full list email in one go. We send it through to our different audience engaged behaviour segments to see how the email is performing. That allows us to kind of intervene, check, is it too technical? Do we need to be short? Like, does the email need to be shorter? And it really gives us a chance to change the email. We've also seen huge successes, actually, if an email is performing across our audience really well, we actually swap it into our welcome journey, and that's proved to increase engagement there. But just beyond the welcome journey, I just wanted to take you through some of the tactics that help support our retention strategy more widely. So one of the key ones is around relevancy, and I would encourage organisations to approach this with caution. It depends on the sensitivity of your organisation. But we find that any time a consumer issue is in the media, when we go out to our supporters, engagement rates just go through the roof. So, for example, some of you may have seen a few weeks ago an e-bike actually exploded at a train station in London. Thankfully, no one was hurt. But the fire marshal on the scene was talking about the risks of buying products on online marketplaces. And essentially that's one of our campaign calls. We hadn't spoken about that campaign in quite a while. And we received such a high open rate. And we asked our supporters a few questions off the back of it, just again, asking them those questions. How do they feel about this topic? Tell us any more information that you'd like to know. Again, feeding that back to our policy teams. So really high engagement that way. And again, going back to this kind of first dates point, getting people to talk to us about what is happening in their day-to-day life, which we have a lot of data and a lot of research, but actually adding a lot of colour to those stories where people's individual experience has been really beneficial. So, for example, here, before we launched our Affordable Food for All campaign about a year ago now, we went out to our supporters asking them about their food shop. What does it mean, like those soaring prices? What is it happening to their financial situation? We had about 20,000 people share those stories. And at the end of those surveys, we always asked them, can we get in touch with you? And around 50% said yes. So before we launched the campaign, we already had a bank of about 10,000 case studies, which is really powerful. We were able to use those stories in social media, and it just really helps support our data and research in that way. And the last point is increasing touch points. So we're really maxing out how much we email supporters. We don't want to overdo it. I'm sure you're all the same. We're trying to find that nice balance. But we're doing a lot of work through social as well. But when the Care2 team came to us about their new product, Cultivate, we jumped to the chance to be able to engage with our supporters on another platform. Initial results are proving positive. So these are two different emails with two audiences that are in our same behavioural segment. So they have been performing similarly over time. But you can see there's a slight open rate and a slight click rate increase. But for us, our measures around getting people taking those high value actions. But we have seen that the more they engage with these different touch points, even if we think they're quite low bars, they are more likely then to take on those higher level actions. So for us and our retention work, so more testing, more learning, working with the Care2 team on Cultivate, and also dynamic segmentation. So our behavioural segments, so our hots, our warms, our cold supporters, is quite static at the moment. We really want to utilise the Engaging Networks email engagement feature, where it will shift supporters into different email engagement criteria, and using that as a profile a basis to send our emails off the back of. So we're trying to get a bit clever on that. And then automation programs off the back of that. So we start with a welcome journey, we end with a reactivation program. Is there anything in between where we can start, activating supporters so they don't get to the point of lapsing, as Paul was mentioning earlier, and losing them? So we're kind of working out that.
So we've both talked about the audience that you engage, and one of the key parts of any sort of journey should be understanding your audience. And it's something I think we do badly as a sector. We talk to people about what we think they want to hear about, but typically it's really what we want to tell them. And I think one of the things that we've focused on in the upcoming report is developing that audience understanding how people want to engage with you, what they want to hear about, what channels they want to use, and using that kind of information to then warm up the audience and keep communicating with them, keep giving them those touch points. And a piece of work that we've done, just looking at research that's out there, is trying to understand what your audience want to engage with you about. And I think we're very, very good at talking about the issues around our organisation, around our cause. But people want to hear about a variety of different things. They actually most want to hear about the impact that they are making to the lives or to the cause, the lives of the people or the cause that they're supporting. And it's probably something that we communicate with people about less, or that we tend to drop into issue emails. But I think people really want to know that they're having a direct impact when they're receiving supporter journeys. Uncomfortably, often for organisations, people want to know about the overheads at a charity as well. They want to know they're getting value for money. And I think that makes a lot of sense if you think about kind of your life and the things that you will engage with outside of work, or if you're buying something for the company you work for. So all of that kind of uncomfortable pence in the pound calculation stuff that fundraisers talk to finance about, and that senior leadership teams get a bit squeamish about, is actually really important, and we should be focusing on it more. And then we see people wanting to hear about the issues and the projects that are making that direct impact. So I think there's a thing there about having a more diverse set of topics that we talk about when we're engaging our audience. And the actual parts of that impact that people want to hear about, they don't feel they're being told that by the sector at the moment. So people want to understand that your charity, your organisation are following best practice when you deliver your work, and not many people feel that they're receiving that information at all. And so there's a real opportunity there to talk about how what you're doing is in line with best practice, or is trailblazing and leading kind of to a new best practice in the sector. And they want to understand that through benchmarking. They want to see that what they're doing is actually effective. Is maybe more effective than work that's been done historically, or work being done by other organisations. They want to know that they're supporting the right charity to deliver the change that they want to see in the world. And then an area where we are slightly better, and it probably points to the use of case studies, is third-party validation. People want to hear from an expert or an individual that's impacted by the issues. And understand that what they're doing is making an impact, and is making an impact in a way that other people are seeing, and not just something that you're telling them is important. And then thinking about your work for a moment, and thinking about the actions that you take and the measurements that you use to benchmark what you're doing every day. We know that 40% of donors lapse within the first 12 months, and that for me is a terrible stat. That means that nearly half of the audience that your fundraising teams are acquiring is losing interest in your organisation or in the work that you're doing over a fairly short period. And there's a real opportunity there to welcome people more effectively and think about how you can marry up those issues to people that want to hear about them and they've expressed an interest in doing something for your cause. The average value of a donor over 5 years is £250. I've worked at organisations that have very, very high acquisition costs. If your acquisition costs are approaching that, you've got a problem, and you want to think about what your acquisition program's doing, and you want to think about how you're retaining people to try to uplift that 5-year value. And then there's the sad fact that, again, 10% of people will leave before ever making a gift to an organisation when they sign up to give a regular gift. And I've worked at organisations where that stat's worse and where that stat's better. But we can think about that very early relationship and validating somebody who's set up, for example, a direct debit, making them feel like they've made the right decision within that kind of 21-day cooling off period. And again, that points to work that we should be doing around welcome journeys. So my takeaway from that is that there's a huge opportunity for us as charitable organisations to increase engagement, participation and income by better building relationships with our supporters and stewarding them through their lifetime with the charity. And so just to leave you with a checklist of maybe things to go away and think about after the conference today. So think about your audience, understand what your audience want, understand what they want to hear about, what they want to be talking to you about. As Katie alluded to, always be testing. Don't just build a welcome journey and leave it there for 2 years to just churn away and to keep going out to your supporters. Keep testing new messages, keep testing new approaches, and find ways of iteratively improving your program. Break down silos within your organisation. Talk to people about the full range of work that you're doing. When somebody comes to your organisation, they don't look at it and think, I've communicated with the fundraising team or with the campaigns team or with the marketing team. They look at your brand and they say, I'm communicating with this charity, this cause. They want to know everything that you're doing. Be personal. Again, as Katie said, send frequent, varied, personalised content to your audience. And understand what success looks like before you embark on any campaign or any journey. And finally, something that we maybe don't do enough for our supporters, make sure you say thank you. It's a really simple thing to say. People want to hear it. They want to feel valued. So with that, thank you.
Some great advice there from Paul and Katie. It's great to see those stats being brought in from other sectors and how we can transfer that across. There's some questions coming in. Do you keep people who are in a welcome journey isolated from other email broadcasts?
Yeah, absolutely. So our welcome journey isn't too long. It's only about 2 weeks. However, if we do have a really important message to say, we do ensure that all our audience are able to kind of see that email. So even though they're kept away from it, we would send the email at a later date again to making sure that everyone who's seen it needs to see it. So we do keep them separate, yes.
Yeah, email fatigue can be a factor, yeah. What segments have you created that you track for email engagement?
So we've created our hots, warms and colds. So essentially it's people who are engaging regularly with our emails. So that's our hot supporters. So above average click rates, people who are opening nearly every email from us, people who have taken actions from us. So essentially when we go out to test emails, we go to our hot supporters. So if the email's tanking with those people, we go back to the drawing board thinking about, okay, how can we make it easier? And when we move down that kind of channel, move down those audience segments to our colder audiences, we notice those are people who don't want too much information. So so the rule of engagement going down the list is actually making emails shorter, making emails simpler, being a lot clearer with the call to action there, so they're able to kind of, take the time that they want to do what we need them to do.
Yeah. And how many emails are in your welcome journey? Over how many weeks?
So we only have 4 emails in our welcome journey, and it's probably every 3 to 4 days, I want to say. So it's quite short and sweet. It's the best of what we've got. But the key for us is making sure it's relevant and it doesn't date too quickly. So that's the whole point of swapping it in and out with content that's just proving really popular with your audience. And I wouldn't, like Paul said earlier, it's not a welcome journey shouldn't just be written, put to the side for a year and then reviewed every kind of few months. Really keep it agile, really keep it flexible.
Yeah, keeping it short, keeping it agile. That's great advice. Past welcome journeys, I think that means after welcome journeys, what are other follow-on ways marketing automations can help with retention? Have you worked that past? I know you're obviously focusing on the welcome journey, but can you speak to some other things that you're doing with that?
Yeah, well, we're looking at a kind of activation journey. So people who are continuing to open, but actually not engage with us in any other way. So what are they getting out of our emails? We can see that they continue just to open, but not actually doing anything. So we're working on an activation. So it's the kind of step ahead of our reactivation program where we just need people to open. But we're exploring that and we're kind of testing it at the moment.
A specific one about one of your slides. On the what your audience wants to know slide, 68% want to know about overheads. Was this research question asked in reference to fundraising communications specifically?
I would need to look into that, but certainly from past experience, it's a question my teams used to be asked a lot. They wanted to know about how many pence in the pound were going towards the cause, and they wanted to know about the kind of level of top earners at the organisation, which now obviously charities publish in their annual returns. So it is a question that gets asked to fundraising teams a lot around fundraising communication.
And could you talk some more about how you use supporter responses to surveys to personalise your content? Specifically, how often do you check responses and what do you use it for?
Yeah, so all our surveys feed into our policy team work. So we have a really great strategic insights team that review all the questions that we send and ensure that we're using it effectively, making sure we're using those answers. So we relay that information back to our supporters. You told us X, Y, and Z. We heard from this person. We also use that information with MPs. So if we know it's happening in certain constituencies, we can say we heard from one of your constituents that told us X, Y, and Z. So we're quite, we're really clear about how we use that data up front with our supporters. But those are just a couple of the ways we use it.
And it's always useful to get these case studies because people can kind of gauge where they are in their own campaigns. So specifically, what's your drop-off rate for your welcome journey?
In the sense of people unsubscribing or just not opening at all?
I presume drop-off rate would probably be around unsubscribing.
I'd say about 60% are engaging in some way, whether that's opening or then going on to take an action and clicking.
Gives people a good kind of benchmark measure when we have these case studies because it's people in the field actually doing this stuff. So you think, yeah, okay, I'm not too bad. And can you give some examples of what things you have found most useful to test in your emails? For us, subject line testing is a difficult one because we just find that if people either open or they don't with our audiences. So things that we found really effective is length of email, button color has been really effective, but also changing the way that you tell the story within the email. So a lot of the time where I see organizations have signed the petition, actually trying to get more of a response and have to sign the petition on the landing page could be more effective. So I had the poll in the poll email as an example earlier, where we just kind of get that emotive response to an issue before that we ask them to sign a petition. So that's been really effective. But if you're just starting out, I would recommend kind of length of email and button color. Those can be all influencers.
I think there's something about what you offer people as well. In a previous job, I worked at Asthma, what is now Asthma and Lung, and we found offering people any value. So we had an asthma attack risk checker, for example, and we had huge engagement with that email in our welcome series, and it ended up kind of getting moved up the welcome series because people were so engaged. So I think it's anywhere where you can offer your audience something that's important to them because there's a particular pain point or need is definitely something to test and to offer during that welcome process.
Brilliant. I think that's all the others. Oh, we have one more just before we go for a break. When you measure above average click rate, is that against your own average or industry standards?
So it's both. So we have the industry's average on our list. To the side so we can check it every so often. But each audience segment for us has their own average open rate and click rate. So we benchmark it against those as well.
Great insightful stuff for you to take back to your own campaigns. Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Katie.